Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lori Feinstein from Neighbors Link Community Law Practice, and I'm very excited to share this new family preparedness plan training with you. Welcome to all of our volunteers, staff, attorneys, and special guests from other nonprofits who are learning with us today. As we go along, I have slides and information. I'm going to pause the slides at times so we can talk. I will be open to questions at specific points just so we can manage the conversation. So I'll pause if you have questions, great. If you don't, we'll take questions at the end. Thank you all for being here today. Now, how did we come about to have family preparedness plan clinics where we see, 5 to 10 and upcoming 30 families in a day? And sometimes one-on-one appointments? It's because people are scared. They're scared of what's going to happen to their children if they're arrested or deported. And in being scared, we can either sit tight and just worry about all these questions, or as Neighbor Link has done, we're adapting to the times and we're going to serve people in the best way that we can. And so the antidote to stagnation is innovation. And that's what this entire training is showing you, a new way of servicing our clients. We're going to prepare in advance with valid legal documents. Now, these are the documents mainly that we work on in our family preparedness plan. A limited scope agreement, which dictates what the relationship is between Neighbors Link Community Law Practice and our clients. We work on permission to travel forms, which would allow their children, our clients' children, to travel internationally without one of their parents because notarized permission is required. We work on a parental designation form or standby guardianship. Generally, it's one or the other. And we're going to talk about all these forms individually so you get more comfortable with them and understand how they're used. There's also a paycheck authorization, which is more self-evident as to what it is. Someone else can pick up your paycheck for you if you're not there. And then lastly, the declaration of inapplicability of expedited removal. Now, I will share when we started at Neighbors Link with family preparedness plan training, really now it's April, just a couple months ago we began this. We had a large focus on this portion of it. And as it turned out, the government has made a lot of changes in the way that it interacts with immigrants. And as a result, while we do put some emphasis on the point that, I don't want to be subject to expedited removal, I don't want to be sent to El Salvador tomorrow, we also recognize that the government has tremendous discretion. And so there's only so much we can do to help a person prepare their arguments against that. We will get into what those arguments are and why as we approach that document in this training. Now, how do we start? Well, one of the things that we realized is that when we have clients come in for the family preparedness plan, they're not necessarily in our system. They're not necessarily prior clients of the community law practice. And so as a result, in order to record the documents and data, we don't need all their information, but we do need basic information. And so this is the intake form specifically for our family preparedness plan clients. The next slide, we'll go straight to paycheck authorization. So this has to be notarized. It's very important during your meeting or your clinic that you have a notary available. And the way to explain this to someone is what's right there. I don't need to read slides to you, but everybody wants their money. And part of what you'll see in this presentation is that rather than coming at these forms from a very legalistic argument and trying to persuade people that they're important, we really just have to come at it from the psychology of the client's perspective, which is not lawyerly, right? They're not lawyers. So it's just very simple, which is, I want my money to go to my family. I earned it. Or I want my children to be able to come to me on an airplane if I'm deported. And so we try, even though we're lawyers, it's really wonderful that we have volunteers working this process because it's really just about ordinary human language and compassion in having these client interactions. So the next form starts to get a little more complicated, which is where training really does come in. And so it's permission to travel. I want my kids. Now, here are the key points of this document. So we're going to notarize the client's signature. And as a lawyer, we always think about who is my client. And so whoever is sitting in front of us at that meeting is our client. Whether it be one parent, then that one parent is our client. If two parents are in front of us, then the two parents are our client. What does that mean? Well, if one parent is in front of us, only one parent is going to be able to sign permission to travel. So we want to make it valid for that one parent. And so what we do then is, in general, we have that parent fill out 2 or 3 copies of the same document. And I want you to see the document. So let's hope this works. I'm going to link to it right now so we can get a little view. Is that working for you? Can you see it? Great. Joe, I have you up at the top, so your nods are going to help me go forward here. You know how this works. So this is a fillable form, but we do it printed out during the session. And you can see either the mother or the father check a box at the top, children's information. It says passport, which can be confusing. But in general, this is for either US citizen children or children who have a passport from the country they came from, right? Because you need a passport to travel internationally. And then you have options on this document. Check 1. My children are traveling with. And this is where we use the term, a trusted person. So this parent in front of us may have a trusted person who can take their child on a plane. This could be a friend, an aunt, grandparent. So we put that person's information down. And if our client doesn't have the passport number of that person, okay, they'll fill it in at home. That's okay. As for me as an attorney, but for an organization that may not be lawyer based, but rather just service based for a community, you don't have to be a lawyer to work on this document. So they'll put it in at home, and this document is still valid because it's been signed and notarized, and they can complete that portion at home. So my children are traveling with trusted person. And then we have another box here. My children are traveling alone. So airlines generally have an unaccompanied minor program for children 5 and up. So this form only allows you to check one box at a time. So that's why I say people need 3 forms. 1 for traveling unaccompanied, 1 for the trusted person, and even 1 to be super cautious to allow the child's other parent to take them on the plane. So that's 3 per person. If you have 2 people in front of you as parents, you may have 6 forms. But again, if their child's under 5 and maybe under 4, I'd say, because this form can last for up to a year, it's valid, then they don't need, if their child's 3 years old, you're not signing a form for unaccompanied minor. So, that's relevant. And then this part of it is, and remember, we're working off these forms, and this really is an innovative approach to handling the current situation. The forms are not perfectly aligned with what our needs are. So in New York State, as far as I can tell, and my colleagues can tell, only one parent needs to sign this travel permission, but we don't really operate that way. We tell the parent, if you go home and you can have your partner, spouse, child's other parent sign this form, and sign their own form and have it notarized, do that. It's just better to do more than to do less. But this, because in New York, the other parent's consent, it says, is not required because they're dead, because there's a court order allowing them to travel outside the country, which not usually there isn't. So we would just kind of, if we have 2 parents doing it, the other parent is also granted his or consent C attached. And it's this identical form, but filled out by the other parent. So I may have confused you. I'll take questions on this form in a moment. Then you go to check 1. So here's the thing. These 3 lines are all the same. It lasts for a year. So really just check the first one and you put in 12 months, because why this is days, that's months. And then the last one is if you don't want it to be valid from today, you want it to start at some point in the future. Well, that might make sense for some people, but given in our situation and what we're using it for, we don't know when a client is going to be detained or deported. So we want it to be effective immediately. So we would just check this one. Okay. And then at the end is the parent's signature and um, and it's notarized, sworn to me this day, notary, and then list of attachments. Again, we try not to make this harder than it has to be. The child is traveling with their passport at the time that this form is being used. So they would have their passport. The box can be checked at the time, or you could check it now, but they'll have their passport. So we're not really concerned about that. Okay, so that is this form. And now I'm going to just pause the share for a second. Do you now see a full screen of people without the share? No. Is it still sharing? Okay.
Sharing. Yep,
All right. So then I'm going to stop the share for a moment. Did that help?
that's right.
Yay. Okay, great. So I just want to check in as we go along on some of the more, complicated questions. Richard, you're on mute, but I'll take your question.
Yeah, just one short question, one long question, um, or short question, but long answer. Short question is when you say passport, you mean U.S. passport?
It doesn't have to be,
Okay.
right? Because it
Um,
could be a passport from another country. If that child is going home for good,
yeah.
right, and they have a valid passport, that should be effective. And if a child doesn't have permission to travel abroad, it's not that they'll be trapped in the United States forever. It's just that it's going to take a lot longer and you have to work through the consulate. And in the meantime, let's say both parents are deported. Who is the child living with? Are they in foster care? Like what's going on? So it's just makes parents feel better knowing that they can handle this if it happens.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, you have a
Sec-
second question, and then we'll go to Laura and then Nancy.
Just touch on the Supreme Court decision, the recent Supreme Court decision apparently stated that in any removal proceeding, they will be entitled to a court hearing. Um, and I don't know how that, I haven't had a chance to read the case, so
Okay, so
maybe.
if you're speaking
Yeah.
to the case about people being sent to El Salvador, is that what you're speaking about?
Yeah, I think it
Right.
was a jurisdiction
Okay,
issue
and
or
the
state
Supreme
issue.
Court just put out a decision, right?
Right,
Okay,
right.
so that's not really exactly on point for the travel permission issue, but I'll just say briefly, it's that you can file in federal court a habeas petition. It's long and complicated, and you would need to have really great legal counsel, and that's fine, but like that does not alleviate any of these issues. It doesn't mean that you'll win.
I just want to know if it affects
Yeah.
what we're doing. That's all.
It
You-
doesn't. It doesn't really. I mean, at the very least, the Supreme Court is continuing to allow a person who shouldn't be in the jail in El Salvador to remain there. So
Hmm.
that's what I take from it. Laura and then Nancy.
Yes, hi. I have a couple of questions. Wanted to know first if this document was created by you all, like you guys created this document or copied it from somewhere else.
Great question, Laura. So we did not create this document. You can Google online, permission to travel, and you'll find a few different versions. And then we selected the one we were most comfortable with, which is this one. We want it notarized. So does it have to be notarized? Honestly, it depends on the airline and it'll depend on the security, you know, guard looking at your forms. So better safe than sorry is the way that we do it. If one wanted to come up with their own forms, and maybe we will in the future, but I don't think we're there yet to be able to know exactly what we would want to improve upon the form that is there.
Got it. And I understand that because when they go to an airline, they're going to need to show this document in the language that they speak at the airlines, which is normally English. Do we offer them the Spanish version for their understanding, or what else do we give them aside from the document signed?
Great question. So we do have most of these documents in Spanish. Pretty much that's the only other language we have them in. So, and that's a good question. So part of meeting with a client or in a clinic is, language barriers. And so it's really great if you have Spanish speaking individuals who can assist or take part, whether it's volunteers or staff. In addition, you can use Google Translate, which on your laptop, on your phone, and in Spanish. And I'm going to show you a link to it in a minute. And then our organization at Neighbors Link uses a paid service called Globo, where we can call into a number and have a human interpreter who can virtually any language they can provide. So we will provide this service of the family preparedness plan in whatever language our client speaks.
And then last question, I apologize for everybody,
No,
but
don't. That's what
I
this is
really
for.
does the caretaker for this particular permission to travel document, did they have to be present on that day?
No, they don't. That's a great question. So if we look back at the document, and here, let me do that right now because it's easier to.
And to clarify, the caretaker would be the person we are designating to travel with the children, correct?
Yes, so the person who's the trusted person traveling with the children is just the trusted person for this document. You may select to have that be the trusted person for another document that we'll get to, but this is only about the international travel. So your question was about naming that trusted person. So right here, my children making this journey with full knowledge and consent, check one. So you can see the notary is here just for the parent. Okay. So the trusted person's name is right here, the caretaker, and they don't even sign this. So you want to let your client know as well, they need to inform the trusted person or caretaker that their name is on this document. And they need to, that's why we keep copies at the end. I'll explain that when we get to the end of the slideshow. But you want your client to know that they should keep all these documents in a safe place in their house, and they need to tell someone where it is. Okay, Nancy, and then Neil.
Hi, everyone. Sorry about the background noise. Just clarification about notarizing, just because I've worked at 2 clinics already. So certain documents have to be notarized, and we have a notary at the clinic who is there to do that. However, in some cases, as Lori mentioned, the clients have to go home and complete the forms. But it sounds like they are being notarized before they're complete. And, or I remember someone telling the clients, make sure that you have these forms notarized. Now, if they don't know how to get them or where to get them notarized, we can certainly tell them. But we also told them this last time that they could come back to Neighbors Link on certain days when there is a notary there.
Right.
Is that all correct?
It's semi. There was one part
Okay.
I'll say, just we do not notarize signatures that do not incur in front of us. Okay, so when maybe you didn't mean that. I just then want to clarify that for everyone. So what it means to notarize a signature is that, like, typically as a notary, I don't even look at the document that the person is asking me. Like, let's say a friend asks me to notarize their signature on a real estate document. I don't want to know their business, right? So I'm not going to look at it. I'm just going to look at the signature page. I'm going to know the title of the document so I can write that down in my records. And I'll watch them sign it. I'll take a picture of their photo ID. which, we have it all for in these situations. And then I'll notarize just that signature. And to me, that's what I'm saying. Like, I consider the document fully executed when my client has signed it and I've notarized it. If another signature is needed, then that is the job of the client afterward to have the other parent go to a notary and have it signed in front of the notary. Or you'll see, a parental designate, if they're not with you at this meeting, then the trusted person needs to go to a notary and sign it in front of a notary. It is nice as an organization, as a nonprofit, to say you can also come back here. So we do drop-in or walk-in clinics every Monday, and they can come back and have it done there. So, we give people, and if it was a serious problem and they couldn't come on Mondays because of work, we would make arrangements. We'd make it work out. Okay, Neil, and let me see. I think we have two hand raised. So Neil, possibly one other person, and then we're going to continue on in the slides. Oh, Delia. Okay, Neil, Delia, and then we'll continue.
Two questions about this process. Just for this purpose, would the trusted person need to be someone who could return to the U.S. if they wish to? And secondly, are we encouraging the parents to get U.S. passports for their U.S.-born children?
Good question. So I'll answer your second question first, which is that I have not yet encountered a parent who had US-born children who didn't already have a passport. It's just so valuable that they have all so far, their US citizen children already have US passports. If they don't, they should go get one. At Neighbors Link, we actually provide assistance with that at the Mount Kisco office. So I have information on that, and now we can provide that. They have walk-in times where one can go there and get help making an appointment with the passport office. So, and I recommend, and actually that raises the main point, which is a lot of times when we're doing this work, this becomes adjacent to a lot of other work. And even though we want to do everything we can in our power to help people, we have to limit what we're doing or it becomes insurmountable because we'll spend the whole day with a person, trying to work out, now get the passport. Let me teach you how. Let's go online. We have to limit what we're doing. Okay. Neil, you had a second question, which now has slipped my mind. So which was that? You're on mute.
For this purpose, should the trusted person be someone who could return to the U.S. if they wish to?
Right. So that's really their choice. That's again sort of an issue that we don't have to confront. That's not what we're doing. Our client is the person in front of us. If that person has made an agreement with a trusted person, that the trusted person has a passport, maybe they're attempting a legal pathway in the US, but they're willing to go back or go to another country. Maybe it's not even their home country. With the children, that's their choice. Maybe they're legal here or maybe they're not, but I'm sure that person will be aware of the impact of leaving the United States. But they're not our clients, so we're not going to advise them on that. And even if that trusted person was with us, they're still not our client. Our client are the people who are the parents signing the documents. Delia?
Yes, thank you. I was wondering what happens with younger children.
Right. So you mean for someone who's 1, 2, or 3 years old?
Yeah, less than 5, right?
Right, less than 5. So they can't travel unaccompanied. They will need to go with a trusted person or the other parent who is also hopefully a trusted person. That is the only way that they would be able to go. We recently had a family come in. Delia, you were there for this family. And because they had maybe the child was 1, 1.5, it seemed like they didn't have a trusted person and they were both afraid they'd both be detained and deported. And as a result, they did not fill out this form and they needed time to think about it. they need it, which is totally fair, right? You have to think about who you're going to ask to do this. As you said, you want a person willing to leave the country. So you need someone who either can come back or is comfortable leaving. So it is complicated. Okay, one more question, and I want to be sure I'm pronouncing your name right, Elvia.
Hi, yes, I don't know if this was already asked before, but say you had a family who there are two parents, and so the other trusted person is the other parent, and then would you have to also do another form for another trusted person if you wanted like a friend, if both in the situation both parents were deported? Could you also do two forms? Would that just be two forms or would that be one?
That would be two forms.
Okay.
So if you like, and I like that you're thinking about that, because what happens is when we began this process 2 months ago, we had one form, and then we realized, wait, we need two forms because what if the other parent is also detained? Then we realized we need three forms because what if they want to travel unaccompanied? So it's sort of by doing the work, what seemed illogical, why would we need 6 forms for one family, becomes logical. So I'm very glad to see that we're all kind of walking through that process together, because the more we intuitively understand it, the easier it becomes to engage with our clients and help them through this process. So we're not jumping out of the room and asking other people, wait, do I do that? Which we were doing at first. And you can hear, for those from other nonprofits who are here with us today, many of the people here on this call in the training are volunteers who've already been working in clinics. And so they've been a part of the process of developing the best practices that we have so far. Okay, so I'm going to share the screen and we're going to go back to the presentation. And I want to make sure I have it open first. So give me 1 second here. Just scoot out of this and make sure there we go. Okay. Now I'm coming back to it. Okay. So this is where we were. We're notarizing our client's signature, and they can have additional copies. Next form is called parental designation. So this can read what it says there. Most important, the parental designate can have any immigration status. It also only lasts 12 months. And we have to notarize the client's signature and the designee's. So often the designee is not with the client at the time. That's okay. Sign, notarize, take it with you. The client will take it. And then the designee can sign and notarize independently, or they can come back to the clinic. Only one parent seems to need to sign this. If the other parent objects to the designate, let's say they don't get along, it's not amicable, then yes, it would be a problem. But in general, you only need one parent to sign this. And the way I think about what is a parental designate, it's kind of like a temporary situation. So they can go to the doctor, enroll in school, almost like it's like a really great nanny or babysitter kind of person who's caretaking for your child, but also has some decision-making power. And so this contrasts, and I'll come back to the parental designation in a moment, but let me go to this slide quickly so we can compare them. This contrasts with the standby guardian. The standby guardian is a serious issue. It's a big deal. A guardian is what we all know of when we have forms that say parent or legal guardian. So a guardian is like a third parent. So in order to select a guardian, you have to be very thoughtful about who it is and why you're picking a guardian over a parental designate. Now, given that these meetings and clinics are often engaged in or managed by volunteers or non-attorney staff, I really don't want people in that position to be giving legal advice about whether a client should select a parental designate or a standby guardian. The job in that moment is to just describe them. What we have found is that the clients know what they want if it's described well. And the reason is because if a parent thinks that they want their child to leave the country and join them if they're deported, then as a result, they don't want a standby guardian. They don't need anything permanent. They only want something temporary. In addition, we found that people who have an adult child and a minor child, so someone over 18 and someone under 18, that over 18 is often placed in parental designate, or they might choose standby guardian because they decide, even if I have to leave the country, I want my children to stay in the United States. So then you want the permanent guardian. So note that the standby guardian is signed by in front of two witnesses. It's not notarized at all. And it's not notarized because it's only valid for 2 months. And at that point, it has to go to court and be signed like a judge because it's a legal guardian. So you don't need a notary because it has to be approved by a judge in family court or surrogate court. Now, it's not our job to take a person to family court or surrogate court to make that happen. That's why we have a limited scope agreement in the beginning. And that's why we know that our client is the parent, it's not the guardian. So we can understand the distinction here. The guardian is permanent. It can be revoked only by going to court. Just like taking away parental rights, of course, it's possible, but you certainly need a good argument and you need to go to court. Now I'm just going to go back here because I want to go back to the parental designation again. So here's a link to this form. So you can just briefly see it. It's pretty long. So you put your name here, address, children's information. The person over age 18 I designate to act in parental capacity is. Now, this person, as you can see, can have any immigration status. And there's no court involved, so it's much more comfortable in many ways. Now, here's that key part. And now I'm going to go back to our screen. Is my slideshow showing again? Good. So I took this part out, question 4, because I want you to look at it. It says, any authority granted to the person in the parental relationship. Yes, you can move the part of your screen with faces if it's covering this on your Zoom. And you can see there's 4 options of when to make this parental designation effective. Now, this is what, again, if you're a nonprofit coming here to learn what to do, you can have your own internal discussion about what you think is best. I think, and I've discussed it with some others, and sometimes people have different opinions, choice D, commencing upon my detention by ICE or similar authority and continuing until my release or until the date of revocation. So in parental designation, you can revoke it at any time by just telling the parental designate. And if that person is going to school and still operating like they're the parental designate, then you alert the school as well. So it's easy to start the designation and it's easy to end it. And if you set it for choice D, then it doesn't expire in advance of when you might actually need it. Because choice A is, just 1 year, 12 months. And then what if a year from now you're still in the same situation? You have to go get a new one. So I feel like it's safer to pick choice D. Now this is getting into the weeds here, but this is where we went over the last 2 months. Why wouldn't we pick choice D? Well, honestly, in our thinking process, at first we didn't, because we thought, oh, but then you need to get proof that somebody's in detention in order to make this effective. And what if the designate doesn't know how to do that? Well, there is a locator online where you type in the person's name and it will tell you where the person is in detention. And we have that on our resources page on the Neighbors Link website. And you print that out or you take a picture with your phone. Then people were concerned, well, what if it takes 2 days for the name to come up? And those 2 days, the child gets off the bus and there's no one there, right? The child needs to go to the doctor and no one can take him or her. Well, I feel like, yes, that is a bit unknown at the moment. It is. But I still feel that this is safe isn't really the right word, a better prepared situation. But that is a discussion that it will continue to have. Okay, so that's
Lori,
parental.
can I ask a
Yes,
question? It's
I'm good.
Andy. So
Go ahead.
we did have a discussion when we looked at this form when I visited with you, that you thought by statute or rule that it expires at 12 months regardless. Is that not right? Because we got into a little bit of a loop around which was the best of those designations. Did just picking the 12 months, was that perhaps safer than going with D if things were going to expire um, by law at 12 months from the signature date? Do you remember that discussion?
Right. You actually just got me thinking about and wondering, was this the question we were talking about? Which is, if it commences upon the triggering event of my detention and it ends upon my release, what if that period of time is 14 months?
Yeah, that's exactly what
Right.
was driving the question.
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that once someone is in detention and this is effective, we have 12 months to figure it out. Right? That I know. So there is access to people in detention. It is possible. It's just, arduous and difficult. Um, it can't be done quickly, but it can be done. So if that family came to us and said, you did this paperwork for us and we're trying to get another parental designation because the mother is still in detention and the father was deported or is also in detention, can you help us? We would help them. We would help them figure out how to sign that again. So I don't have the best answer for you. This form wasn't originally designed for this.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Okay. Yeah, like I guess where I thought we got to was it wasn't clear if the most comprehensive coverage would just be to say pick the 12 months and then we deal with it in the way that you just said, or to pick D if we were only worried about if you get picked up by ICE or so anyway, I just wanted to raise it and that we don't need to I just wanted to raise it
Yeah,
again.
thank you. Some people are picking parental designate because they don't expect their child to be in that situation for a long time. So they selected above guardian. Delia, your hand is raised.
Yes, I was wondering if the phrase can be written in a different way, like if I am unavailable or something like that, not necessarily saying if I am with ICE detention.
Is there a reason for that?
Well, the
Very
reason is, didn't you say that to ascertain and to make sure that this person is in ICE detention might take a couple of days?
Right. That's a good point. However, if we use the word I'm unavailable, then what does unavailable mean? And is that triggered when I'm sleeping? Yeah. So that term is too ambiguous to have any meaning in this legal form. So it has to be, if it's a triggering event, it has to be something that has a common understanding and that we could find a piece of evidence for. I mean, if you have a picture of somebody, going into an ice ban, or that might be sufficient. My guess is that if this were to happen, like the doctor wants to help you, the school wants your child there. So I feel that it would err on the right side in those experiences. And the doctor, it's not emergency medical care, you can reschedule it for 3 days later. And also if the child needs somebody to care for them in their house, that's not really the parental designate anyway. That's just someone you trust out in the world who knows to go to stay at your house, right? You don't need a legal form for that. Okay, any other questions on these parental designate versus standby guardian? Okay, we'll continue. Okay, so here we are, and hopefully this is continuing to record. Okay, so permission to travel, we did this. We're going to go to the next slide, parental designation. We did that. We did that. We did that. Okay, whoops, actually, let me go back to that for a second and I'll show you what this form looks like. Okay, so this is the this is the standby guardian. It's an official form. These are fillables, but again, we use printed out copies in our meetings. And this is very short. And there's 2 witnesses and it's done. It's 2 pages because it has to go to court. And that's why. Okay. Now, hopefully that's back on there. Yep, looks like it's still recording, which is great. Okay, this form now. This is the declaration of inapplicability of expedited removal. So again, in our process, I'll just share sort of how we've grown our practices on how we do this. When we began family preparedness planning just a couple months ago, this was a major focus for us because there's statutes that say either you are subject to expedited removal, meaning you don't get a judge, you don't get a hearing, we can just decide you're deportable and make you leave the country. Or you fall into a category where you are entitled to a judge and a hearing. And the way that it was interpreted was if you've been here for more than 2 years and can prove it, you're entitled to a judge and a hearing. If you have a pending asylum application or some other pending form of relief like a U visa or a T visa, you're entitled to a judge and a hearing. If you're already in removal proceedings, you're entitled to continue those removal proceedings in a courtroom, in an immigration court, before an immigration judge and have your hearing. So we were thinking, oh, let's get as many documents as we can to show that this person has been here for at least 2 years. And that way, if they're encountering ICE, they can show them a document and all the papers are at home and this will be the proof. And this will be, if they still put the person in expedited removal, we have all this great evidence and it'll be like a very good test case. So what now has turned out is that we're understanding that the 2 years of evidence is not a guarantee, that there's elements of discretion in this whole process. And without getting into, the legality of it, in which case I would want to bring another attorney on here with me. It's just what we need to know is that we want to put our best foot forward. We want to present the information that we've been here for more than 2 years, but it's not a guarantee. And so what's happened is sometimes people make appointments or say they'll come to the walk-in clinic and they don't come. And we found that sometimes it's because they don't have all the papers that we ask them to bring, all the maybe tax returns, utility bills, leases, school records, birth certificates. They didn't get it all ready in time. And we don't want people, this is the real world as opposed to just what's the ideal world. We want people to come and we want to help them however we can. And so putting so much pressure on them to bring all these documents was not helping them get the services that they needed. So you can see this 1-page form here, which we have in English and Spanish, basically says, I have checked the box. I've been physically present in the United States for at least 2 years. If the documents I have with me are not sufficient to establish my 2 years continuous presence, I request more time to produce those documents. Okay, and there's some other boxes too that can be checked, like I am currently in removal proceedings. And then if you've been here less than 2 years, then perhaps you want to check a box for I'm entitled to a credible fear interview, which is what precedes potentially an asylum application. And you sign it. And we tell our clients, carry a copy of it in your wallet. Okay, but we're realistic. They're not going to bring all the documents with them, but we do want them to have some of these documents. So here's a list. This is a giant checklist. It's kind of intimidating, but these are the kinds of documents that help prove 2 years residence. So when we're in a meeting, whatever documents the client brings, they'll bring a pile in the beginning. and they'll be looked through. And hopefully you have a team member, a second person who can go do all the photocopying and bring them back. And these boxes can be checked. As an organization, you can decide how to do it. Sometimes we do it at the beginning of the meeting. Sometimes we do it at the end of the meeting. I really give the volunteers a little bit of control over that situation, depending on how the conversation is going. And also depending upon what the client wants. Sometimes somebody is here because they really want to do this. So do this, so then we do it first. Okay, and then we have another sheet, which isn't there at the moment, but the other sheet is just a blank chart where you write in the documents that you brought with you. This is very time consuming. So again, you want to think about, do you want to tell the person, bring these documents with you to the appointment, bring some of them with you, and then keep them in a safe place at home. Okay, we have some questions. We have 2 questions. I think Elvia and then Neil. Go ahead.
When is someone supposed to present these? Is it because I understand that when someone is being detained, usually a lot of their belongings get taken. So do you present this at the time that you're being detained, or is this at a further time when you're in detention?
So good question. So when our clients leave, they leave with their originals and a full set of copies. And the idea is you're showing the copies to ICE or the police or DHS, anticipating they might take it from you. That's why sometimes people say, oh, what if I just have pictures of it in my phone? We're like, oh, that's nice. They'll take your phone. So you don't want to show people your phone. Not only will they take your phone, they will look in your phone for evidence to show that you were thinking something criminal, like find photos against the government, whatever it is, in association with your home country that they misconstrue as something else. So we don't really want to be giving them our phone, and we don't want to give original documents either. So that's why it's great to have copies of it and keep the originals in a safe place at home. And are they going to have them all? Well, if they're picked up outside their house, then maybe they do have access immediately to the documents. I mean, we brainstorm, like in the ideal world, you're handing all these documents at that time. But the reality is they're not going to read them at that time. So we don't know exactly what's going to happen. We're not really sure. We know we want to have them. We want to be able to make the argument that you have them truthfully. And so as long as they're in a safe place and it's known where they are, their family members can move quickly to inform DHS that they've been here for 5 years, 10 years. Okay, Neil?
So you answered my first question. No longer do we advise them to carry a couple of copies of a couple of key documents.
Not really. I mean,
Right.
we can, like if they have, I'm trying to think what the best thing is that, you
A
don't want
tax
to,
document.
right.
Tax.
Like a page from your tax return from like 2022, 2023, 2024. Sure, if you can fit that in your wallet, you're better off doing that. Expect they'll take it, and you'll need your partner or friend is going to need to sort of do this again. And most likely they'll call us at Neighbors Link to say, what do we do now? How do we get this information to them? And we can help them do that.
A second question. So if I've been here more than 2 years, I shouldn't check the box about the UN Convention on Torture? Is that what we're saying now?
We should. I think you're right. So maybe I missed that point. So I'll go back. I'll go back to the screen share and we'll go look at that document one more time after Laura's question.
I just wanted to get a idea of how the process for family preparedness clinics / presentations work. Like, do you guys first have an informative session prior to having a clinic on a different day and then follow up meeting? Just trying to get understanding of what that process might look like.
Right. So what we do is, and I'm going to see if I can pull up an email about it. So for instance, we have a clinic coming up and this clinic is with another department within Neighbors Link because we're the community law practice, and then we have other services that are substantial. And so there are clients there who may not have used our services before, like at the family center, where Neighbors Link does parent-child education and a number of other programs that are really great for families. And so families are concerned about these issues. So we're going to go push in. We're going to be on site. We're going to go there. And so I email the people who are directing this process at the family center a script, basically, like 2 paragraphs of what they're going to say to their clients so that they are accurately describing it so people know what it is that's going to happen when they come. So that's how that happens. And then for our walk-in clinics, we have someone on our staff who makes phone calls to people who've expressed interest and says, "Can you come on Monday?" And sort of books dates tentatively so we know approximately how many people might come on any given Monday. And that individual was invited to this training and couldn't be here, but she's going to watch the recording because it's really helpful when the people who are talking to our community members have a deep understanding of what it is they're offering to them. So my recommendation would be do better than we did here, learn from us, and if you're starting the process now, sort of start at the point that we're at, which is get your scripts now and start that way so there's clarity from the beginning. Okay.
And
Yep, go
sorry,
ahead.
and there was just is there a one pager for families to prepare for the actual meeting or appointment with you guys?
The only thing that we ask them to prepare is number one, have a conversation with your children's other parent about a trusted person who you might want to take care of your kid or kids if you can't. And think about what documents you could bring with us to make copies of so that we have something on record in case you're unavailable, that we can use as evidence to say that you've been here for more than 2 years. And I just want to be clear that when we work with clients, we're not saying we're their attorney in that situation. We're not making that commitment, and we're clear about that. But we can, if somebody calls us and says, "I need the file," or "I don't," like, we can give it to somebody else, with consent, the trusted person, let's say. If they can't find it, we'll give them a copy of it. That kind of thing. And we might represent them. We're not saying we absolutely won't. That's just not a part of the deal of the family planning clinic or just, one-on-one meeting. Okay, Joe.
The last time I was at a clinic, we discussed the idea of, or well, the top of at the top of the notice that says these are the following documents that you could show it for 2 years. It says, it's good to have a document for every month of the last 2 years. So I was wondering whether we could ask people to, I mean, like we all have access to our Con Ed bill or our electricity bills online, phone bills online, credit card bills online. So if we could if we could, I don't know how many of our clients will have that, but if we could tap into going online, then we could print out while we're in the office in a matter of minutes, print out the first page of the last 24 months of their electric bill or whatever. Is that something that, I mean, it would seem to me if we want to go by the highest standard of 24 months and one proof for each of those months, might that be a good way to approach this?
Well, I think that's a great idea for them to do, not for us to do. I think that to try to log into someone's account is going to be much more complicated if they don't know their password and you're resetting passwords. I mean, we know we have this for ourselves in situations where it's like, just pay the bill. I cannot access that account. It's going to take me forever to recall that password and they don't send you the link. So I just, again, like, I think that's an adjacent issue. It is not our job to locate those papers. We can tell them what kinds of papers they should have, they should collect. And then it's up to them to go home and log into Con Ed and you can even say to them, if you like, you can email us your screenshots, right? Because I would assume a lot of people don't have printers. You can email us your screenshots. We will print it out for you and we'll upload it to your file, and we can print it out and leave a copy that you can pick up. Just let us know when you're coming. So I think we do have to put that responsibility back in their hands. Okay.
Okay. The emailing screenshots also sounds pretty complicated to me. Okay, I'm an idiot when it comes to this stuff. So, but I just wanted to say one other thing is that we had also discussed that you would put together a brief paragraph we could read to our clients about the difference between the standby guardian and the designation of personal and parental relationship, so that we, as non-lawyers and not representing these people legally, can say something that is clear and coherent. And so I was wondering whether you've been able to put those paragraphs together so we can read them either with a translator there or through Globo or whatever, but that simply says this is this and this is that, and it's your choice.
So we're getting closer to that because we've now narrowed down the language we're using to describe the parental designate versus describing the standby guardian. And we're also having a case study essentially of understanding what factors our community members are relying on when they make their decision about which form. And so a comparison, it's what I found is it's not really black and white of this, I could say this is temporary, this is permanent, but you can go to a judge to have it revoked. This allows you to go to school and doctor. This one will allow you to apply for health benefits, health insurance, anything a parent can do, the standby guardian can do. This parental designate can be an undocumented immigrant or anyone of any legal immigration standing. The standby guardian is going to have to go to court within 60 days and have a judge approve it. So that person doesn't have to be a US citizen, but they should be comfortable walking into a courtroom and likely being fingerprinted because any reasonable judge is going to want to assess who is this person who wants to be a guardian. Do they have a criminal background? Who else is in the household? Are there any sex offenders? Those are standard things a judge would look to if there's going to be a new guardian. So long story short, that's sort of the description. And I think some of those things are going to ring true to some of our clients and other parts of it will be meaningful to other clients. So I don't necessarily want to narrow it down to just 3 issues. Somebody who has an adult child over 18 who's a US citizen who wants their child to stay here, that's going to be for them why they pick standby guardian. Somebody who knows they want their children to go to the country that they would be deported to, that person would be like, why would I pick a permanent guard? Like, that seems like too much. I don't need that. So is there anyone here who, any of our wonderful volunteers at Neighbors Link who could share your experience with how someone analyzed that in one of your meetings? Anyone willing who had a client who picked parental designate or standby guardian? You don't have to have a perfect answer. Otherwise, I might call on someone.
Well, it seems like in the time that what I'm remembering is that it felt to me that the person was that it was I always even forget the person in parental relationship and not the standby guardian that was sort of directed in that way. You know, it wasn't like this is what you should do, but it felt like the communication was this is the better thing to do.
Okay.
And 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 I don't see if we really think that that's what's in the best interest of most clients, why wouldn't we say, you know, this is the form that will probably be the easier, less complicated form. You could put these dates in it or these conditions in it. There is a more other form, and then you say something about that and then we say something again gets translated. But it seems like it would be very hard to describe these without your affect coming across
Right.
in terms of what you really think. You know, it's like your mother saying, "Are you really going to wear that?" She's basically asking you a question, but she's not
Right.
asking you.
Well, I think you're pointing to the fact that we present the parental designate first, and then we present standby guardian. So there is a bias because the standby guardian has a permanent aspect to it. And so it feels a little uncomfortable in a setting where we're doing, 5 different documents and we don't know these people or the family that well to really encourage them to pick a guardian, when we don't know their trustworthiness. And that's not our job to find out. But I don't want to push anybody into that who isn't absolutely certain that they trust this person. So I think you're right. There is a bias toward parental designation because it has much fewer ramifications and it can be renewed. One can sign it again and one can also move toward guardian. It just wouldn't be right away. And I think the immigration status issue of going to court is a big deal as well. Okay, Neil, question? And then I'm going to go to the last couple slides and we can use the last few minutes to talk again.
Responding to what Joe said, most of my experience, they had very young children. I think there was one case where someone had an adult child, and it would not have occurred to me to suggest the alternative. It didn't come up. That's probably where it would only be relevant with the guardian.
You're saying if they have an adult child and minor children, and by minor, I mean under 18.
Yes.
Right. That might be. I mean, parents may know that themselves. We may not really need to articulate. They come in and often know if they want their children to stay in the US or not, if they're deported. Okay, I'm going to go back to some of the final slides here. Here we are. Okay, so we were going through this. We talked about the documents. Okay, this form I'll talk about. And so we sort of raise the stakes with all our documents, if you can see the order of operation. So paycheck is easy. Who doesn't want their money? Permission to travel is relatively easy, unless you really have a very young child and you don't have a trusted person yet. You can still do it for each other, the other child's parent. But they're a minor, you're not going to do an unaccompanied form. But that's pretty clear. Then we move to standby guardian. Then we move to parental designate, which is, a very, very good babysitter or a nanny who also has the ability to make some decisions about school and doctors. Then we move to standby guardian, who is a parent, who is a third parent. And now we're at power of attorney. So power of attorney is a very serious document. So we rarely do it. In general, it's there. Some of our clients know what it is. So we say we have it. Here is a copy of it. We do, thanks to Delia, who's on this call, we now have it translated into Spanish, which is great because if someone is going to sign this, it's really important that they fully understand and read every part of it. But it's serious, right? Because it's revocable, but you have to do a lot of things to revoke it. You have to put it in writing, and then you have to make sure all the places that think this trusted person is the power of attorney, that they know that that person's not anymore. And it's dangerous because if the power is given to somebody who isn't as trusted as you thought, they could empty your bank accounts. So this is more of a financial arrangement. maybe it's a real estate transactions. There's a whole list of things, boxes one can check on the form. And it's, as you can see, it needs 2 witnesses and a notary for the client and a notary for an agent to ensure that there's no fraud. So we also have clients sign an additional one sheet, which we just put together recently, that states the power of attorney was shared in their primary language. And we give them also a copy of the law about how, it didn't get there in the slide at the bottom, but how to revoke it, because I want to make sure that they know that. So that's power of attorney. We can ask questions at the end, but then these are sort of our optional to-go papers, which in the beginning of our family preparedness sessions, we were including these and spending time helping people fill them out. It's very time consuming. And and honestly, when I mean time consuming, 2-hour appointments, 2.5-hour appointments, especially when we're talking about the need for translation, if we don't have, let's say, a Spanish speaker volunteer to work with the family. So, or what, or if it's a different language, then we often need to use Globo or also Google Translate. So these are forms: emergency contacts, lists of children's education and medical needs, list of assets. We describe what is an asset: your car, bank accounts, jewelry, right? We just kind of describe. It's really good. We give them a chart. You can fill this out here or at home, just to have it listed so nothing gets lost, right? So that your children, your trusted person knows where your things are. And make a plan sheet, just ask some of those bigger issues and questions, some of which are covered in forms we went through and some of which aren't. Some people want to do this at the session and fill out all the medical allergies of their kids, great. Others might say, I'll do it at home, which is fine. It's very exhausting and difficult to go through this meeting. Neil?
So this is definitely an improved process. Question is, what about bond? I don't want to give power of attorney, but how do I set aside access to some of my money if I'm in detention and I need to post bond?
You can't. I mean, unless you have a joint account with someone who has access to that account. If you have a bank account and you're in detention, you're the only person who can retrieve money from it. Maybe, we just have to think, maybe someone visits you in detention and there's a checkbook. One could write, I don't know if a lot of people don't even have checkbooks anymore. Maybe, I'm not sure if there's electronic transactions, they're not going to have their phone. So I don't know the answer. Is the money stuck? I mean, eventually they'll be out of detention. Eventually. We just don't know if it'll be in the United States or someone else or somewhere else. But at that point, they'll have access. But that could be a long time.
Could they sign a power of attorney if they're in detention?
Well, it's difficult to say. It could, the best way that could happen is if they have an attorney visit them or friends visit them, one of whom is a notary, and they have 2 witnesses and a notary present, and then it's all signed, and then those people leave and go to the agent and then watch the agent sign and notarize that. But it is true, a power of attorney can be fully executed and signed at different times between the client or the owner of the accounts, let's say, and the agent. That agent can sign later. And in fact, sometimes that makes sense. If you want a power of attorney to only go into effect if you're detained, or you want a parental designate or a standby guardian to ensure it only goes into effect if you're detained, maybe you don't have your trusted person sign the document or notarize the document. You just tell them where it is so that it's not a fully executed document until you're detained. So somebody could choose to do that. Yes, Delia.
Yeah, nowadays with everything being online, just give the person your password and they can access your account.
That's a great point. That's a great point. If it is all online, if they have the password, sometimes we log in. That's a good point, because sometimes we have things set up on our phone or our computer and we don't really know what the passwords are necessarily. And then the problem is if you're bounced out, you have to be able to log into your email or get a text message. And then it's, does that person have your email? It's confusing, but it is possible if you plan ahead. But then you have to really trust someone to have your email account password. So that's like another, that's a level of trust beyond power of attorney.
So,
So,
Lori, I'll also say this came up when I was dealing, for example, with my parents' estate. And I think we just need to take care of providing legal advice to that because it probably goes against the terms of the use of online bank accounts and things to do
oh,
that if
you're
you're another
right.
person. So, as a practical, if someone does it, they do it, but I'm not sure we want to be
You know what,
advising to
Andy?
do that.
Thank you. Let me add a correction. I do not advise taking anybody's passwords and accessing anybody's bank accounts. It is illegal and one should not do it. And this is also a confidential training, but yes. So these are our upcoming clinics, right? So we have this huge one on April 14th. We have about 10 volunteers. We do need another notary. I'm a notary, but we do need another one. And if anyone has time to come even for part of the day to be an administrative assistant in the sense that when someone brings their documents to save time, we want to take them out and have them copied while the session is ongoing. And then these are our future walk-in clinics coming up, and then we do sort of planning for 3 weeks at a time. And I will say for the nonprofits here that are interested in this, we don't know how many people are going to come on any given Monday. So we have alternative legal volunteer projects that people can work on during that time. So it isn't about, we don't waste anybody's time. And I hope all of you can see how absolutely fantastic our Neighbors Link community law practice volunteers are. We could never have done this. We have served hundreds of people and families because of their work. And it would have been impossible without them. So cheers to the volunteers.
Lori, so Alan and I are gonna come. We're not sure we're gonna be able to stay for the entire thing. We're figuring it out. But she's a notary, and I'll remind her to bring whatever the stamps or whatever she needs to have with her.
Fantastic. Thank you. She's a notary and she's bilingual, right?
Yeah.
Ellen. Okay,
What
that's
location are the
great.
clinics at?
Sure. So the clinic on the 14th is at our Mount Kisco office where the family center is. And Delia had asked about parking, so those who have said that they're coming, I will email about that. And the other clinics are in Ossining, which is where our law practice is. And another, consideration of this is why I didn't put, street addresses and stuff. We just want to always be careful about confidentiality and security. So even though it's a walk-in clinic, they don't just literally walk in, right? So we are calling people in advance. We have a list of who we think is coming. If somebody shows up and it wasn't planned, they're gonna, stay downstairs for a little bit. Someone from our staff will find out their names. There's some, work going on. And meanwhile, we have private signs all over the place and doors that close and lock to ensure that no one can come in without permission. Should there be anyone entering who is not someone we want there. Okay, so any last questions or final comments from anyone here now that we've cleared everything up?
I put a question on the chat to see if should we contact you if we want to attend one of the the next clinics that are coming up.
Sure. So my best recommendation would be to go to the one on the 14th because when we have the walk-in clinics, sometimes because it's not a clear appointment, somebody doesn't come until an hour later or 2 hours later. And so if you're coming specifically for the purpose of observing a session like that, then either come when we have a specific appointment with someone outside of the walk-in clinic or come to the one in Mount Kisco, which is going to be huge, incredible. And you can email me and we can talk together. You want to do May 5th? Okay, let's talk afterward and see if we can find a way for you to do it. So any walk-in clinics in Yonkers in the near future, No, but we would love to do that. So if there is a need there and clients are beginning to ask about these kinds of services, let's talk afterward and see how we can develop it into a clinic. Richard?
You know, on Monday, I know it starts at 10. Do you want to stay early or what?
No, you don't need to be there early. 10 o'clock is fine.
And Lloyd, did you send a calendar invite for the Monday clinic? I just don't, I'm looking at my calendar, I don't
didn't.
see it there.
I didn't because
Okay.
it's not remote. In general, I send the calendar invites when we're doing something remote.
Okay, so just remind me the location again. I'm sorry, I missed it.
Sure. You know what, Andy, for you and everyone else who's awesome, I can do the work of sending a calendar invite to everyone who's RSVP'd for the 14th. Okay? And I will make a note of that right
Either
now.
way, yep.
Yes. Okay. Any last comments or questions?
Great job on this. Very thorough. And the slides are great, very clear.
Good, thank you. And I'm going to put them into a PDF, so I will send out the slides to everyone who RSVP'd for this training.
Great.
Okay. All right. Thank you all. Thank you so much for your time. Oh, and Barbara's back, but thank you so much for your time and attention to these important issues and for helping us brainstorm, because each time we do this, we get better at it. Thank
Great.
you. Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
Lori. Thank you.
Bye.